If you're thinking about doing it or it's your first time to step up into the non-boating scene, well today, that is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about stepping up into the boating tournament space. We'll talk about what it's done for me, what it offers to you, what you can learn, what I've learned. We'll talk about some of the etiquette as well. And lastly, one of you will walk away with a free tournament entry to a Australian Bass Tournaments event. Brand new to the fishing game, or you're thinking about doing your very first non-boater Australian Bream Tournaments event, or maybe the coangler one with the bass event there, well, you're going to find this video quite interesting. The learning that I've done in that tournament space has really helped me out with my general angling ability, and I reckon my catch rates, my fish sizes have all gone up because of it. There's a bunch of other things that it's offered to me as well, like the opportunity to have a look at new gear on certain boats that I might be thinking about purchasing in the future. But more importantly, I reckon I've made some of my best lifelong friends in that tournament space. So today we're going to step through the process of going through a non-boating event. We'll cover everything that you need to know for your first event and what to really look out for, what's kosher, what's not kosher. But to wrap the intro up, I will say I've been doing the tournament space for around about 6, maybe even 7 years in the kayak space, and about 2 years ago I jumped in my first bass boat. Following that, and then following the non-boating events that happened after, I have to say I wish I had have done the transition or had have made the transition to boating earlier. The kayaking is great, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love it, but the deck of cards I've been able to develop, to learn, the spots I've seen, my overall enjoyment for fishing has grown drastically. So for me, there's probably 3 reasons that I got into the tournament space and non-boating to start with. Now, your motivations might be ever so slightly different, but for me, at the time for my employment, I didn't really get to choose when I got to go fishing, so I was restricted to the time frames. And I thought, hey, that's exactly the same as a tournament guy. Those guys have to go out, they don't get to choose the calendar or the tides or the weather, and they've got to go out and perform. And simply put, I wanted to be able to do that. So that was my first reason. The second reason was that I didn't know many spots, and this is another really good reason to get into the non-boating space. You might find, or you might be getting into fishing and you might not know your local waterway, or maybe the next waterway over or the one after that, and you're interested in fishing it. It's a really good opportunity to jump on some pros boats that have got all the gear, and you can watch them find fish on that waterway and maybe pocket those spots for later. And not just spots, but techniques as well. I remember watching Steve Morgan in Sydney Harbour. I got to sit at the back of the boat. I did a bit of filming, but I watched his technique for basically 2 days there out of that 3 Australian Open competition. Just being able to watch that really reinforced whether I was doing the right thing or the wrong thing with those lures. So for me personally, when I think about those things and those experiences, I undoubtedly think to myself, I should have made the step earlier. The best part about making the step up and having to go at the non-boater space is that there are no expectations of a non-boater also. What I mean by that is that you could win, you could grab a 10 kilo bag, or you could get a donut. It's all good, nobody cares, everyone understands that a non-boater is learning. So if you get a fish, it's 100% a bonus to the experience. Honestly, give it a go once, and if you're anything like me, you will not go back. You'll absolutely love that space. So let's start the process. So the first thing you're gonna need to do is jump onto the ABT website. There's a link there below, but you're gonna need to have a look at which tournament that you would like to have a go at. There's a form that you can download and just fill that out. By the way, you do need to be an ABT member to get involved as well. So that $60 gets you a Fishing Monthly magazine subscription and the Tournament Angler, which is like a bit of a calendar and a breakdown of the latest gear and the calendar of all the tournaments that are coming out that year. It's a really handy thing to have. There's something here that I'll just quickly try and explain as well. You have to appreciate that if only 50 boats enter, then there's only going to be a choice of 50 non-boaters. Obviously, you need boats to fish. So let's say in the case where there's 60 non-boaters but only 50 boaters, 10 people are invariably going to miss out. The way you circumvent that is twofold. The first one is you can guarantee your entry. If you are traveling with a boater or you're sharing their costs at accommodation, for example, there's some particulars on the ABT website about exactly what you need, but you can guarantee your entry. That whole process is about making it a little bit more affordable for the boater. So if you're chipping into the overall cost of a trip or the competition weekend, you are going to get a go at fishing that weekend. All the other boats and the spare boats that come up are all by first in, best dressed. If you wait till the last week and it's a high demand round, well, you might actually miss out. Don't worry, you'll get your money back or you can transfer that to another round. But like I said, you can avoid missing out by getting in early or going on a trip with someone. If you are having trouble with accommodation or transporter, or you want to go pre-fish with someone and you don't exactly know anyone, the ABT Angler Facebook page is a really good place there for you to start. I've seen a bunch of posts on there about newcomers asking general questions and whatnot, and the overall reception in the community in that page is actually really good. After all of the entry is done and you're turning up to the weekend, your first real timing to make is the briefing. Details will be on that website, but it's generally around about 5:30 at the venue location. At that space, you want to take your fishing license if it's applicable and turn up to the counter and basically register that you are present. You'll see the ABT guys generally sitting under a marquee or some sort of shade with a bit of a table. It'll be pretty obvious who the staff are. The briefing will kick off and the weighmaster or the tournament director will get up there and they'll then start to talk about some particulars of the event, you know, some rules, some reminders. But the thing that I reckon I'm always listening out for is my pairings for the day. So you're going to hear exactly this.
I need boat number 1, Mario Bukic. I need Kurt Thompson. I need Mark Crompton and Lindsay Pride.
See you later.
Langley, Byron Hill, Stephen Price, Cole
You got me
Wilson.
day 2, bye.
Effectively, you'll hear a boater's name and your name, and that's your day 1 pairing. You'll then hear a second name and another non-boater's name, and that will be your day 2 pairing. Effectively, you've got 2 boats, 4 people, and on day 2, you swap the non-boaters around. So go to the front, meet your group, and walk to the side. I'd suggest you ask a few questions, and I've got some suggestions here that have worked out for me, but the main one I reckon is to get their phone number and their name. Write it down in your phone or type it in, whatever. You never know if a boat breaks or you have mechanical trouble on the morning of, so you want to keep the other person informed of any changes. So when I'm talking to them, I'll talk to my day 1 boater separately to my day 2 boater in terms of a bit of location. The reason I do that is because those boaters are in competition with each other. I'll generally ask the first boater, hey, what boat have you got? What am I looking for in the morning? Is it colored? And that way, at whatever time that we decide to meet, I know exactly what I'm looking for. It's here as well that I'll offer my help for the morning. So if I am competent in reversing or driving a boat, I'll mention that. Generally as a non-boater though, if you're not competent or you're not confident in doing those things, it's better to say that, hey, I'm not too good at reversing a trailer. Your boater will be really impressed if you do that. And the reason for it is that nobody wants a random trailer or a $90,000 boat crashing into a random pontoon. Boaters will know how to launch solo, and the best thing for you in those scenarios is to just stick out of the way. It's all good, we're all there, we're all new to boating at some stage. There's no problems at all. After I've got that stuff out of the way, I will ask about the type of fishing that we are doing. Sometimes they'll give you the spots that you're going, sometimes they won't, but I'll be looking to ask for what type of rods and how many rods I should bring. So recently in this conversation here, Paul, my most recent boater, was talking about how he was going to fish deep. He mentioned the location and he said, hey, I got them on blades. To me, that basically meant I'm gonna rig a blade rod, I'm gonna rig a deep plastic rod, and I'll throw a rod for the cranky crab as well. I might even throw a bit of metal tungsten on it to get it down deep. That is how I interpreted what he was telling me. In that same conversation, I'll also float the idea of what I'm going to bring with me. And that'll provide them with the opportunity to say, hey, my boat is actually kind of small, only one bag and 2 rods, or I've got a giant 21-foot boat, bring as many rods as you want and bring a duffel bag. After you do that meet and greet with your first day boater, then I quickly do the same with the day 2 boater. Now, admittedly, they might not have a great concept of what they're doing on their second day yet. They haven't fished the first one. So I definitely make sure that I've got their phone number in detail so that I can give them a call at the end of day 1 and talk about day 2 with them. Rightio, let's go through the comp day itself. I'd recommend first of all that you do not arrive late. Just don't be the guy that everybody's waiting for. If you can, help launch the boat, but like I mentioned before, if you don't know what you're doing, just chill out and wait for the boater to let you know when to jump in. At the actual venue themselves, the boater will check in, they'll grab the key tag, there might be a bit of a live well inspection as well, but when things calm down a little, it's about the time that I start asking the boater where to put my gear. So that obviously it's out of the way and I pay appropriate respects to the boat itself. Generally though, the live well that you'll be using to throw your fish in will be the one that is on the side that you sit on, but the rods will generally be off to your side as well. And a lot of the boats have some sort of hatch, like this one here, that you will get to throw your gear in. Now, I cover what to do around the boat in a minute, but from here things are generally pretty obvious. You and the boater will go out and try and catch 10 fish. So as you get back to the weigh area, your job will be to return the key tag. Don't start a conversation, go in depth, don't get distracted. Your one job is to get that key tag onto the board. Why is that important? Because if you miss your cutoff time and you're tagged with late, your boater will suffer for it. There are horror stories of non-boaters forgetting to put key tags on there, and that is not something that you want to do. Penalise both you and the boater after you've gone to all that effort all day to come up with the fish. After you've got the key tag in, then go and grab a weigh bag. There'll generally be a line. You're looking for a line that looks something similar to this, and you're looking for one of these bags that looks like that there. Now, as soon as people are done weighing in, they will hand you the bag, but not everybody will. They might keep the bag and take it to their boater as well, like you will be in a moment. But once one becomes available, grab the blue bag and head back to the boat. Throw the fish in the bag, and then I'll go back to the weighmaster and then weigh my fish in. I'll have my 30 seconds of fame talking to the weighmaster for the day. But if there's a queue there, you're looking to hang just in these bump tubs here. Throw the fish in there and they'll stay alive. Take a happy snap or two after the weigh-in, and then your job then is to return your bag to your boater. Get back on the boat and help the boater put their fish into the bag. As it becomes their turn to weigh in and they leave the boat, I'll then hang at the boat and make sure that it doesn't drift away, double check that I've got everything and that I'm not leaving a mess behind me. That's day 1 complete. I'll then jump on the phone or find my day 2 boater and touch base with them to see if their plan has changed from what they told me during the briefing. After that, it's a rinse repeat. Day 1 is exactly the same as day 2. So big thank you goes out to Australian Bass Tournaments for providing one free entry to give away to one of you guys. All you need to do to enter is subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment below on what venue you would like to give your first ABT tournament a go. It's a non-boater entry, and I'll draw the winner from the comments below in 1 week's time. Hey, if you go to the same tournament that I do as well, jump on my boat and we can go and pre-fish together. I reckon it is a brilliant prize because one of you is going to get a guaranteed entry and experience everything that I've talked about in this video. Thanks again to ABT. Rightio, so the last major thing we're going to talk about are things to do on a boat as a non-boater and somebody else's vessel, and things to not do. Now, this isn't a complete list, but I guess if you follow some of the principles in here, you're going to be well on your way to really enjoying your time. So at the start of the day, the first thing that I really like to do is ask the boater, hey, is there anything on this boat that you would like me not to do? And hey, what are your expectations of me? It's an open-ended question, but I like it because a boater can then broach subjects like, hey, I just got my cushions re-upholstered. I'd really appreciate it if you did not stand on the leather seats. They might talk about netting a fish, not netting a fish, coming up the front, staying down the back, and where they like you to cast. I do always tend to finish with something like, hey, if you do see me do anything that you don't like, please tell me about it. I'd rather have a good day on the water and no grudges. And I do that for the reason of comfort on the day, but I also want to learn some good habits that I can then transfer to another boat and not piss somebody else off in the future also. Another real key point to understand is that a non-boater is in very much a subdivision. We're there for the journey, the learning, the experience, the new spots, the cool techniques, having a look at the gear, and of course, this sweet sponsor prize packs. Don't get me wrong, there's glory to be had as a non-boater. If you win, it's still an achievement, but you are not playing in the game that a boater is. They, like you, have paid an entry fee, but that entry fee is double. They are paying for the fuel of the boat. They've paid for the $50, $60, $70, $100,000 boat. And to me, that means that all day long, they get the first cast at the snag, the flat, the rock, the pole, whatever it is, they get first cast at it, no exceptions. Unless, of course, they specifically say, hey, give that pole a bit of a go now. They're very much in it for the business end. And if they win the comp, and then they win the grand final at the end, they're talking a $50,000 to $70,000 fully key turn ready boat. Appreciate there's a little bit more in it for them than there might be for you. Next point, keep your mouth shut. You don't want to be the guy on day 2 that is telling that boater everything about your day 1 boater or your pre-fish boater. I keep things here generic, and if I'm ever asked, I say, hey, I got my fish fishing plastics. We were deep. Or I was on an edge and I was throwing crankbaits. Realistically, that'll tell them everything that they need to know, and they will be able to make some decisions from there. So a bit of a tip here that I kind of touched on a second ago, but it is a good one for you. Anglers will always lead with what has worked for them previously and what techniques have worked for them previously. They'll go straight to their best technique. They will not start with their worst technique. And what that means is that when we pull up to the spot, I will take my time getting ready. You can see some footage here of me mucking around and doing it. It looks like I am grabbing my gear and getting ready, but realistically, I am watching. I am watching my boater fish that first cast. The reason for that, like I said, I'm going to watch his technique. I reckon that if he's caught fish using that technique, that lure, well then the highest probability for me as a non-boater to collect fish is by starting to mimic that action. Like I said, people start with their best technique. They don't start with their worst one. Second last point, don't cast over the boater's line. Unless you've got some sort of crisscross kind of organizational thing going on, crisscrossing over the boater's line is something that you want to avoid. Fish your own sections out of the way of the boat. I guarantee you there are still fish to be had. And while we're talking about it, let's broach the subject of fishing from the back of the boat. Appreciate why you're there. Obviously, you're there to learn, you're there to experience. So fishing from the back is a little bit more difficult than fishing from the front, but in my belief, it's not even an issue. If you're fishing flats, you've got exactly the same probability of catching a fish than the guy up the front. But if you're fishing structures, say bridges or pylons, maybe boats at the Gold Coast, for example, yes, things can get a little bit difficult, particularly if the boater is hard up against the edge and he's fishing in front. You're literally driving over dirty water. Most boaters won't do that though. They'll step out to the side and you get a really nice opportunity to hit the backside of the snags. Honestly, it's mind games. Don't let any of it deter you. You might be a better fisherman than that boater, and there's a real probability that you might be. How often have you caught a fish out of a snag from the second cast? It happens all the time. It's not a thing. Non-boaters outfish boaters all the time. As you develop as an angler, develop some relationships, get a bit of cred, so to speak, on the scene, different things will start to happen. You'll be invited up to the front of the boat. You'll be invited to drive the electric, for example, or you'll be trusted with the net a little bit more. With reference to netting the boaters fish, I'll always grab the net and go up and help out. But if you're not confident in netting, this kind of goes back to what I was saying about launching and recovering a boat before. If you're not confident with netting, you don't want to be the guy that causes your boater to lose a fish. So own up and basically mention that. The boater will then net their own fish. It's no real big deal. The very last thing I'll cover is offering to pay. Now, there is no rule on it. It is not mandatory. A bunch of people have a bunch of differing opinions on it, and all of those opinions are okay. Plainly though, if a boater couldn't afford to enter and pay for their own fuel for the tournament competition days, well, they wouldn't have entered and wouldn't have gone into it. To me, I always offer because I have a solid job, and if I've enjoyed the day and they've created a really good environment, I love to contribute to that day. Don't hold yourself to that standard though. If you're a 16-year-old or you're just getting into fishing and you don't quite have the money to contribute, don't offer. That is also okay. There are always other ways to contribute. I have heard of and done myself where I have dropped lures on my way out or left them in my glove box when the boater has nicely declined for petrol money. I'd say here, find your own groove, whether it's bringing sandwiches or chips or lollies to the boat, or taking some really nice happy snaps of the fish that the boater has caught for them, as opposed to throwing your lure straight back in. There is more than one way to show your appreciation for that guy that is sitting out wide fishing the snags so that you can have a go also. So those tips there will get you started. If something random pops up, just remember why you're there and why they are there. You're there though as a non-boater to learn, to experience, to go through this journey and see the gear, see the boats. For me, I took the opportunity to have a look at a bunch of different boats while I was doing the non-boating space, and I asked a lot of questions about the boats themselves so that I could then eventually buy one that basically everybody recommended that I should buy. Remember, it's a day of fishing also. Sometimes you donut like I did recently on day one, and then sometimes you have giant bags like I did on day two. It's the life of a non-boater. It's exciting, it's fun, and I really enjoy it. So for me, doing these tournaments, it was really when I started thinking to myself, I'd rather be over there doing X, Y, Z, or we should have approached this bank from that angle over there. And I remember that time that I was fully controlling the boat on the electric at the front. Those to me were signals that, hey, I needed to leave non-boating and go to boating and give that space a go myself. Remember the free entry in the comments to the ABT tournament. Smash that away. I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.